So, a common trait with Brexiteers is that they just don't get how the European Union works. They either don't understand what the European Union is or they don't get how it works. And for the average person, I can kind of understand why. Predominantly, it comes down to time. We work in care homes, in hospitals, in schools, on the roads, in factories, so we haven't got time to go through the political jargon. So we kind of have to put our trust into a handful of people that we hope do understand it. We call them members of the European Parliament or members of Parliament. So when they come out with something that's demonstrably not true, my blood does start to boil because there's only one of two options really. The first one is that they're lying. They're outright lying. And this is why I have such a low opinion of Jacob Rees-Mogg and why I fundamentally detest the man. I don't think he's stupid. Credit where credit's due always. He's a very smart man and very well educated. So when he comes out and talks about the European Union, he does know better. He is intentionally lying about the European Union to demagogue them. When he comes out saying we can trade on World Trade Organization rules, but we won't have to pay tariffs, he knows that that's not true. He is outright lying. And it is a failure of the media every time they do not correct him. Every time he comes on TV and a big caption underneath comes up and says, "This man is lying." They're doing a disservice to the country. So you have politicians like that. And then you have the politicians who don't seem to understand how the system works, whether it's the European system or our own system. I honestly don't know which is worse, but case in point, Belinda Del Lucy. Now, Belinda recently gave a speech because Juncker sat down with Berko and they had a meeting. She was condemning it, insulting our allies, and I have to stress this, they are our allies, saying that he did not have the right and it was outrageous. Well, here's the thing, Juncker absolutely has the right to sit down with Berko. The same as he has the right to sit down with Irish politicians and with Polish politicians and with German politicians and with Spanish politicians and on and on. You get the idea. At no point was he influencing domestic policies. I mean, you'd think if that's what was happening, he'd sit down with, I don't know, the Prime Minister. But they don't seem to care about that. And this realistically, it either comes down to one of two things. Either Belinda has no idea about the European Union, what they do, how they operate, or she's just trying to get people flared up over a lie that she's creating, trying to make it seem like the EU is dictating domestic policy, which again, if you've done a little bit of research, you know is not true. Now, I did have a slightly exaggerated example, and I'm going to stick to it, of one reason why Juncker would sit down with any politician that wasn't an MEP. And that's to say, for example, the UK decides to completely legalise heroin. We're going to make heroin like alcohol. Over a certain age, go for it. Just don't do it in public. Now that does present a few issues when most of the other EU territories kind of has it on their naughty list. And while we don't have many land borders with Europe, we do still have a few. Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland being one such border. That would be a reason for British members of Parliament to sit down and talk with European members of Parliament like Juncker. Now, I get that's an incredibly exaggerated scenario, but it's that kind of thing. And to be honest, I have no idea what they were talking about. but I know that the EU does not dictate UK laws. And that is a Brexit lie that has been debunked over and over and over 100 times already. But then Belinda went on to display really, I think, her lack of intelligence. So I don't think she was intentionally lying. It seems like she was reading from a script. But it goes to show what she later went on to say, goes to show her lack of intelligence when she then condemned European speakers who had said that they had spoken to British politicians, or British representatives, I should say. And she condemned them for saying that they were British representatives when they should have been called, when we're not Britain, we're the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I mean, it's either she loves getting wound up about things that don't matter at all, like certain terminologies, and I personally do it with archery all the time, but you'd still be labelled as a British a representative. And considering that she was so focused on throwing in Northern Ireland as the United Kingdom, I find it kind of hypocritical, considering that Brexit politicians have been taking a dump on Northern Ireland for at least 3 years, completely ignoring the shit show that they are creating for the people who live in Northern Ireland, and the fact that Northern Ireland overwhelmingly voted to remain in the EU. But then you look at people like Anne Widdecombe. Now, Anne Widdecombe is a politician who's made my blood boil for a number of years now, but she recently did a thing on free speech, condemning the EU for not protecting free speech. But in her opening statement, she said words to the effect of, this is my first address, and I hope it will be my last. Why? Why throw that dig in there? Why throw that insult in there? You know what annoys me about our parliament? When they stand up and say, my right honourable friend, or my honourable friend, when half those fuckers, there's nothing honourable about them. There's nothing honourable about Ian Duncan Smith, or Esther McVeigh, or Boris Johnson, or Amber Rudd, or Theresa May. Or hell, even Matt Hancock, who said that under 25s are just too damn lazy to earn a living minimum wage. Yet in European Parliament, you have people like Anne Widdecombe, a seasoned politician, who throws out a dig like that so carelessly. Europe is our closest ally, figuratively and literally. Our closest ally. I've said 100 times, I live in Dover. On a clear day, you can see France. That's how close they are. They're not some disembodied spectral mass of evilness. They're right there. Well, technically they're over that way, but you get the point. And then during this speech, Anne Widdecombe went on to say that the European Union doesn't protect free speech. Now, either she knows her role, or what her role could be, or she just doesn't get that as a member of the European Parliament, if she sees an issue like free speech, and in her opinion not being protected as much as it should be, she absolutely has the right and the authority to set up a committee, to work towards ensuring that every single citizen in every single EU territory has absolute freedom of speech. She absolutely has that right and obligation if she sees it as a true issue. But she either doesn't want to do the work, she doesn't realise that that is her job if she sees it as her job, or she just doesn't care and is quite happy to lie. And as a side note, I found this particularly infuriating as a few years ago, when a number of women found out that their pension had essentially been moved back a number of years and that they could have lost it altogether, Anne Widdecombe came out publicly and essentially said, "Shut the hell up, how dare you complain about this?" This is a woman who is incredibly wealthy with an incredibly secure pension, telling people who are exercising their free speech, who have just potentially lost their pensions, to shut up. And now, recently, she comes out saying that the EU doesn't protect free speech. If you genuinely believe that, you're in the perfect position to change it. But again, it comes down to one of two things with Brexit politicians. Either they do not understand what the EU actually is and what they do, and in turn their own roles within the EU, or they are demonstrably lying. Now, any way you cut it, I personally think we deserve better than that. I personally would have their pensions, not their pensions, excuse me. I personally would have their wages stripped of them. Because right now they're getting over £70,000 a year. Over 70 grand a year to spout out lies and to insult our allies. Am I the only one who finds that unacceptable?